All right. Hey there. Welcome to Beauty and the Pom podcast. I'm Kiani Mills.
And I'm Andy Reid.
Two friends who have a very similar set of values, but who have taken very different life paths to end up in similar situations.
We are also business owners, parents, property enthusiasts, and bloody short on time. So we bring you this podcast to shine a light on humanising business.
Because look, let's face it, business is life, and life is business.
Welcome to the Beauty and the Pom podcast. It's a fabulous, somewhat miserable day actually in Melbourne. But Kiani, how are you? How's things up in Queensland?
Well, I won't rub it in, but it may have been sunny up here today. Are you sure you want to ask?
It's the last time I'm going to ask, to be honest. Anyway, gang, we're going to be talking about this CEO mindset. I'm really keen on this one, Kiani. It's something that I know I've had challenges with, but lots more of my clients have had challenges with, all around feeling like we belong in the roles that we have generated and created and earned for ourselves, right?
I agree. It's a really cool topic, and it's something that we don't necessarily talk about, but I know we all feel it. And a lot of that comes out in ways that we may project to others, ways that we doubt ourselves, we hold back, we compare ourselves to others. That's a huge one. And then finally, we look at how do we internally earn the right to be who we are in our businesses and wear that CEO hat as such.
It's a really interesting one. I've been talking to a number of either business owners in the real estate space, franchisees, people that are really looking to expand the empire. And you look at it from an external point of view. There's one lady in particular who is done tremendous work, right? Incredible. And you look at it at the surface, from the outside looking in, all you see is success. You go, wow, this human is clearly killing it, right? She's doing really, really well. But more often than not, our conversations always end up in a space of self-doubt, right? She always, she's just gone and bought her second sort of office space in the next suburb and expanding the empire to that extent, right? That's a serious play, going from one office to two and what have you. However, she still really struggles to give herself any credit, and it fascinates me. It really, really does fascinate me. I tend to cop it as well from time to time when people go, geez, you're doing all right, and you don't really recognize it in yourself because a lot of us half decent folks, which I can be from time to time, and it's certainly what this human is up in New South Wales. She's a top human, and she's she's humble, but she's clearly not humble enough to hold herself back from expanding out, right? So I don't know. Kiani, have you copped anything like this yourself?
Oh, I think that internal radar is, as we've spoken about before, our worst enemy is our own mind. And the way that others see us is very, very rarely the way that we see us. So I think it's a very common thing. It's interesting, though, how it appears or, presents itself in each individual person. Like, everyone's different. And we don't know her life journey. We don't know her previous struggles. We don't know her issues that have come about to create doubt in her mind and cause this to go on. We only know, I guess, what we've been through, but it's so interesting to see.
By the way, campers, what this is Kiani telling her kids off, because I don't know if you heard in the background, but Kiani is a mother of two, as you heard in one of our earlier episodes, and she is currently got her mum voice on. So that is why you can only hear me, because what I'm watching is Kiani giving her kids shit.
I'm back. I was half trying to be a serious mum and half listening to you give me shit in the background. It was
Oh, magic. You know what, gang? We talk about humanizing business. I think that is just probably the best example of it right there.
And I'm pretty sure you made a comment to me before about no matter where we are in the pecking order, nothing brings you down so freaking hard as children do. It doesn't matter who you are. They want something. They want it now.
I tell you what, if you want to get your ego checked, just take on your kids, and you will lose. And then all of a sudden, you are, doing what I was doing last night at 8:15, and debraiding my daughter's hair, with a cat falling asleep on my shoulder, feeling anything but the business person that I profess to be. It's just like that, right?
I love it. Love it. That is the balance of the life that we live in, though. And this is the whole reason that we brought this podcast to life, because we wear a role at work and we wear a role at home. And that is it. It is debraiding our girl's hair with a cat sleeping on our shoulder. That's life.
It really, really is. It really is. And the really hilarious part was, while I was doing that, I was actually SMSing and helping one of my other agents get a deal over the line as well. So I was actually in a bit of CEO mode while I was like over here, while I'm debraiding hair here and balancing a cat on my shoulders so she doesn't scratch the shit out of my traps, right?
That is the Kodak moment. Like, you've just painted the most beautiful picture in my mind. We should have got Felicity to take a photo.
Oh man. Anyway, let's get back to this CEO mindset, right? Because it's interesting. I want to ask you the question, because I know that Kiani ain't going to be saying this herself, so I'll say it for her. She's doing all right for herself, and she's become really quite a successful human being in her field, and very much expanding beyond that particular field as well. She won't tell you that, right? But I'll do it for her and embarrass her instead. But Kiani, how do you see yourself when you look in the mirror? How do you see yourself?
Wow, that's a question, isn't it? Look, it's definitely changed, and it's definitely changing. And I think it always will, like everything. But for a very long time, I held my success based on external validation points.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've grown and evolved and had some really phenomenal milestone achievements, it's given me a hell of a lot more self-confidence to be wearing the hat that I perceive to wearing the armor that I've strategically put on.
Mm.
And I really am now starting to get to a point where I feel like I belong and I feel like I fit in, and I'm getting to the point where, and this is something that you and I spoke about a little bit earlier, about understanding my worth to be in those rooms surrounded by people that intimidate the shit out of me. That's now where I feel comfortable. Whereas before, I felt like an imposter.
Why?
Oh, where do I start? I'm too young to be in this room. I don't have a degree to be in this room. I don't know anywhere near as much as they do to be in this room. I've only been in business for X amount of years, and they've been in business for whatever's. I'm literally trying to keep my business afloat and keep dinner on the table, and here they are with multi-million-dollar businesses. It's a total comparison. Everything about it is comparing myself to other people. And I think the thing that I missed, and this is now me going, oh, hindsight, light bulb moment. Yes, I was comparing, and yes, I felt less than, but I saw it as shameful. Whereas now I think the shift has been, now I see it as, oh, how exciting. Whereas, does that make sense?
Yeah, you've really jarred us with the word shameful. That's really sort of put me on my heels a little bit. But because it's quite an abrupt, it's quite a harsh word, right? And it can relate to any manner of really shitty things. But to use the word shameful in this context, where you are shameful about your success and about the rate at which you've been successful and what have you, I reckon there's a stack of people that haven't been able to define it like that, but certainly can correlate the associated feelings to that word. That's really an emotionally powered word, right? That whole shameful thing.
Yeah, and if you look at the emotional wheel or the emotional chart, which probably got one next to me somewhere, shame sits really, really close to being one of our, I guess, deeper fearful wounds. So underneath that, when we look at the emotions that come from shame, can be guilt, which is a very, very large feeling. So for instance, for me, guilt would be, oh, I could have worked harder, or I could have made another phone call, or I could have done more, or I feel guilty for not, maybe if I know my potential was more, I didn't live up to my own potential. So I'm guilting myself into feeling shame. Or I look at myself and say, oh, I did do well there, but I didn't do quite well enough, I'm giving myself a sense of lack, which is then leading to shame. So there's so many other subsidiary emotions that sit under shame that can, and rightfully so in most people, when you start with that, oh, you're an idiot, or bloody hell, stupid. You start with that, and then you tend to start to go, that didn't quite impact me as much that time. Let's put another layer on top and be like, you're useless, you're helpless, you're not good enough. And it tends to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And any of those or all of those emotions that sit under it can and do end up leading to shame.
It's massive. This topic is absolutely enormous because, when you look at the way that the world is perceived now through the lens of social media, I'm absolutely going to go on record and saying it's not social media's fault, right? That we have that need to compare vanity metrics where we're validated by the number of thumbs up we get. Success equals volume of likes. The last time I checked, gang, likes don't equate to dollars and cents. But I will say that the way that we perceive ourselves because of how social media has been set up, and I know that Meta changed some things with Instagram so that it doesn't show the actual volume of likes and so on and so forth and all the rest of it. But it really has, vanity metrics really have conditioned us to not focus on our own lane through fear of being compared to the person that's running in the next lane.
Yeah,
I'm a prick for this. As big and bad and ugly as I am, can be an absolute prick to myself when it comes to this. And generally what I find is when I'm not being true to myself and I post something, then I know that I'm not doing it for the right reasons. I know that I'm doing it because I want the likes as opposed to just doing it because I feel it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's like you're looking for that, and that's what we're talking about, that external validation to satisfy something inside of you that you're currently not able to do yourself.
No, totally. So, and we're talking about a CEO mindset, which is a truly internal process. So I got my sort of interpretation of what a CEO mindset is, but what's your definition? If you were to put a sentence as to what the definition of it is of a CEO mindset, because there'll be a lot of sole traders, small business owners, SMEs, and what have you that will be listening to this, sales agents, rental department people, conveyancers, all the rest of it. What is a CEO mindset to you?
Yeah, and I guess good point to make that little disclaimer part, especially around this. This doesn't matter what your role is. This doesn't matter what your title is. We're talking about a mindset. And if you haven't noticed, a lot of what we're talking about is internal. So for me, a CEO mindset is really around holding myself accountable to the highest standard as if I would expect of another at that CEO level.
Do you reckon she rehearsed that, gang? I'm not sure. It sounded incredibly eloquent. I don't know.
Don't ask me to repeat it again because I don't know what I said.
Oh, man, that sounded so much out of a cereal box. It was that clearly defined. It was unbelievable. That's amazing. And annoying at the same time.
Whiteboard behind me that can just predict when you're going to ask me questions, and it quickly writes things.
Am I that predictable? That's really bad. It's a bit of a hilarious oxymoron, right? It's a bit of a contradiction because when we're talking about, the need for external validation and so on and so forth, your definition there suggests that in order to have a CEO mindset, you need to compare your actions to that of a CEO.
Correct. And it is too, because think about it this way. So a lot of us, whether we like to admit it or not, we have very high expectations of ourselves. And by having high expectations of ourselves instantly means that we also have those expectations of others because we believe that other people should behave the way that we do. So when we perceive what a CEO would be, we then instantly set expectations on it. And for me, that's kind of the motivation behind my take on it, is to act, behave, and deliver at the expected level that I would put on someone else.
Can I give you my version of it, right?
I would love, well, this was my next question, so jump ahead.
My version of it is, I personally think it is an entirely internal game in the sense that for me, when I look at a CEO, right, or, when I'm thinking about what makes them the type of individual to be at that level, right? What makes them? What is their makeup? What is their DNA? I reckon what it actually is confidence that the intent and the intellect with which you're making your decisions are following a North Star that that you believe to be true.
I like that. Does that mean, though, that the North Star intellect that you believe to be true can change if you're tired or if you're running late or if a kid's sick?
Look, it can change if you actually don't know everything. And last time I checked, especially if you're in a human services business, so like, for example, real estate sales, 8 billion people on the planet, and they're all wired a little bit differently, right? So, as long as you believe the level of intellect with which you are making those decisions are appropriate for the decisions that you're making, then if you make a mistake, you won't have regret, right? And CEOs, we're talking like a CEO mindset. Is that a perfection? There's no such thing, man, right? And so as long as you feel that it is the right level of intellect to be making the right decisions, and then if you maybe sort of stick a little carriage onto that train by saying and recognizing when that intellect needs an upgrade or recognition in your vulnerabilities, I think that for me makes it an entirely internal game. Because when you think about, and this is one thing that we need to be a little bit wary of here, I reckon, Kiani, is when we say the word CEO, I reckon the majority of people that are listening to this, their minds, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong here, you can send us a DM if you like and tell me that I'm talking shit. But when we talk the word CEO, we are automatically taken to the top of a skyscraper and a person that's rocking the biggest Armani suit or massivest heels or whatever the rest of it is in a corner office with this ridiculous view, right? That's what our minds automatically shift to when we talk CEO. And therefore, a lot of people will potentially feel initially that this whole mindset's not even relevant to them.
Unachievable, or it's not relevant. That's the perfect word for it. Yep.
So that's where I think we need to make it an internal game, because like what Kiani kind of alluded to a little bit earlier on, gang, this whole CEO mindset, it doesn't matter if you are just starting your career or if you're just starting your business, or like my client up in New South Wales, you are transitioning from small to medium operation, or whatever the case may be. The CEO mindset is something that we all should be looking to achieve, and we all should be working on ourselves in order to achieve. Now, on that, Kiani, what do you think you've done over your journey to help you to get to this level, to get to this point now where you actually feel you are starting to feel like you belong? Because, gang, you won't be, a lot of you that are watching this, that are listening to this podcast, you won't be able to see what I'm seeing here. The Kiani that I knew a wee while ago and the Kiani that I'm looking at right now, there is a visible difference between those two. A couple of days ago, when she apparently was discovering this for herself, I think I made the comment to her afterwards. I was like, "Shit, you look really calm," and that could be brought about by said acceptance of your standing in the game. So what is it? What things have you done? What stuff have you reached out to in order to help you to gain this belief in your intellect and your intent?
Good question. And this topic was one that we've spoken about a little bit, because it was something that really fundamentally changed my mentality through my business journey. And my business consultant said to me many years ago now, he looked at me and he said, "Look, what role do you want to have in your company? You have any choice. What role do you want?" And I said, "Well, I want to be the CEO of my company." And at this time it was, maybe one, maybe two, three of us max. And he said, "Can I be frank with you?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." He said, "The only way you will be the CEO of your company if you start thinking like a CEO. I understand that at the moment you don't feel that way, but if you constantly think that you are a sole trader, you will be a sole trader." And there's nothing against sole traders, but in my company, I had staff. I had to stand up and lead. I was not a sole trader, but I was still really behaving as if I was. So it was more of an upgrade in my mentality. And I didn't have to choose CEO. I could have chosen BDM or manager or whatever it might have been. But for me, it was the CEO. That was what I aspired to be in my company. So through that, and through looking through the looking glass, that was a lot of throughs, as I was talking before about the shame piece, and this comes back to the whole point of us starting this bloody podcast, it's about humanizing business. And in order for us to succeed in business, the human part of us needs to heal if there is healing that needs to be done, and it needs to upgrade when there's upgrading to be done. And for me, it was someone telling me, shut the fuck up and start acting like a CEO if that's what you want to be. And I went, whew, great, okay. And I started to do that, and I started to live it. And I started to implement things that meant that not only was I acting and mentally thinking like a CEO, I was implementing procedures and processes and getting the support staff around me to support me as if I was a CEO. And it takes time. Everything takes time. But at the same time, too, I was dealing with the layers of emotion, negative self-doubt emotions that I had put on myself that had become so freaking comfortable, because that's what made me, I don't know, it gave me a minute to have a pity party, and it gave me a minute to be, every time something would go wrong, I'd be like, you couldn't do it anyway, could you? No, you knew that. Don't worry about it. Whereas the mentality that then changed, that went, okay, great, that didn't work. That's teaching you something. Let's go figure out a better way to do it. And it just, over time, it started to become comfortable and it started to feel familiar. And it got to last Tuesday night that we were talking about, where I was in a room with people that I aspire to be like, and went, holy crap, for the first time in my life, I don't feel out of place. I'm excited to be in this room. I feel like I belong. This is incredible. I'm nowhere near these people in my stature right now, or in the business that I'm in right now, but I know that I am worthy of being in this room, and I'm excited to meet these people. And I mean, of course, I love meeting people, but I felt that they would also too be just as grateful to meet me as I was to them. And that was huge. But that really did come back to time and figuring out what I wanted, which was the mentality side, and then dealing with the roadblocks that I kept putting the roadblocks in along the way and just slowly chipping away at them to get them out of the way.
What would you say, putting you on the spot even further here, what would you say would have been, if you're happy to share, what would have been your biggest roadblock? Like, it was the one thing that just took a long time.
I felt like a fraud.
Why?
A lot of the time when you talk about our fears, they're kind of not rational. And my feeling like a fraud, as I said before, it was, you're not old enough, you're not rich enough, you're not smart enough, you're not this enough, you're not that enough. And that carried me through so many things. And while at the same time it pushed me to be better and pushed me constantly keep going, which is an absolute benefit, at the same time too, it really did put those chokeholds in. And I don't know how it came up or why. I think, again, it was just that layer upon layer of little things. And I got to the point where I just felt as though, I was a fraud, and that I didn't deserve or belong in any kind of environment or business situation. Yeah, it was kind of all encompassing, really.
Yeah, and you can take it metaphorically or literally, as was the case the other Tuesday with you. You would earn the right to sit at the same dining table, right? You know, like when you think about going like when I was back at school, and in the dining hall, in our dining hall we had three, real long bench table things with benches either side, and then at the top at the end of the dining hall was a little raised bit with just one sort of 10-seater dining table, 12-seater dining table almost. Yeah. And when you first started at school, the only people that were allowed on there were, your senior like your big players in the school, right? Your big fish. And it's weird how society makes us sort of have that sort of, top of the table sort of mindset of, how do I earn the right to go and take a seat at that dining table? I know that I had a coach for a short time a couple of years ago when I reached out to him because I was really struggling from a confidence point of view. I got myself really confused because I was trying to do too many things at once. And he challenged me on that. He said, why can't you go and sit at that dining table? What's, really, what is stopping you just pulling the chair out and sitting at that table with those big players? What's stopping you? What entry fee do you feel you need to pay? And it's really interesting when you think about that, right? So, like, let's take those sole traders, for example. A lot of the sole traders that I speak to and that are either that I'm friends with or what have you, they don't even realize that they are absolutely in control of their destiny and in control of their time and in control of their lives, complete control. Because every decision's on them. And
We are.
100%, because all they're doing is what they know they can do, and they are just cracking on doing what they are doing, and a lot of them have got it really quite simple in that respect, which is really, really cool. But this whole concept of and I don't know whether we need to relabel it, change it from a CEO mindset to an empowerment sort of mindset that allows you to feel that level of control over your actions and your intentions and so on and so forth. Because, like I mentioned, when it came to the social media side, I know it's the ones that are forced are the ones that are shit, right? The posts that are forced out are the ones that are crap. The ones that I feel I have to do are the ones that are never any good. And it's always the ones that I've just do off the cuff, that are just me doing my thing, that are the ones that end up doing really, really well. But I was listening to a book when I was on a plane coming back called and it was the new version of a real huge book that's been one of the most, one of the biggest selling books in the world. It's called The Psychology of Winning by Dennis Waitley. And he's done a new version very recently that got brought out. I think it was earlier this year. And I would highly recommend that anybody that's having real confidence issues or real struggle in terms of the direction, I would highly recommend that you get this book. The title of it sounds very masculine and very competitive, and I'm going to win at all costs type thing. It couldn't be further from the truth. It actually took me a bit of convincing to picking up myself in audio form. But the audio book is phenomenal because it actually works as an interview between the author, Dennis Waitley, and one of the original publishers of the original book. And they talk, which is so good. And they go through all the stuff of the old book, but then they start translating it in and he gets Dennis's take on how it's different now than to when it was back then, and all this sort of stuff. Incredible book. And some of the notes that I've taken from that are, because each one of these elements to the psychology of winning, it's all around self. And the first really cool thing that I took from all of this, it's all controllable because it's all self, right? It's only us that can control self.
But that's that's almost like the secret to life that no one ever told us. Because for how many years have you heard the phrases, I was born like this. This is just the way I am. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't change. It's 100%.
And I think going down these elements, positive self-expectancy, positive self-motivation, apologies, gang. My family's about to burst through the door, as you can hear. Big Al is saying hello. Big Al's the dog, by the way, the golden retriever.
Okay.
And you talk about things like positive self-image, positive self. Hold on. Let me just tell him to shut up for a sec.
So this is Andy's turn to put his dad voice on. I know before you try and yell with a smile on your face so that the camera doesn't know that you're yelling in dad voice.
so bad. And you've got things like the list goes down. It's all positive self something. Yeah. So positive self-expectancy, positive self-motivation, positive self-image, positive self-direction, positive self-control, positive self-discipline, self-esteem, self-dimension, self-awareness, and self-projection. Just listening through those as he was going through them is really it really brought home to me how in control I am of my own game. Yeah. Because I was very much falling into the trap of because I'm looking to ideally become someone that enough people trust enough to maybe follow, so that we can try and shift the needle and create a breed of professional humans. Yeah. And I'm comparing myself all the time, which is just so dumbass, to some of these others that are in positions that I want to be in, that I'm thinking to myself, well, man, I can be at that table.
Okay. Yeah.
I can probably cook for that table half the time. And yet, here's me stood at the outside, like Billy No Mates, doing the whole pity party thing that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how big and ugly we get, right? I reckon if you asked any of the top CEOs in this country, I reckon they go through plenty of these sorts of cycles, right?
Look, honestly, as I said, we don't know what we don't know. And question though, in the story that you were telling about that table, and your coach said to you, "Why didn't you?" What was the answer?
I think a lot of it was a self-worth thing. I think a lot of people that struggle with this whole CEO mindset might be able to relate to this, right? One of my biggest challenges is I will shift a needle or help someone or provide value to someone. But in my mind, I'm providing value for them, and therefore it's their value to own. And so I'm forever giving of this value without really recognizing, my input into that, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
And you're a very selfless individual, and that's a beautiful quality that you should be very proud of. But you're right. It's almost as though you are doing it from such a genuine place that your contribution almost is not recognized within yourself, that you have done such a deed to help that person in such a way.
Now, it's interesting you talk about that word selfless. One of my trips down mental health lane was about exactly this. And I think it's probably that whole top table conversation thing that may have triggered it a little bit, because you talk about the whole selfless versus selfish. Most people don't like being selfish, right? They feel like they want to be doing something for other people.
Raised with negative connotations to it.
Yeah. And I, until not too long ago, saw it as an on-off switch thing. Saw it as an absolute. You're either doing a selfless act or you're being selfish. You're either being selfish or selfless, with a very defined line between the two. And you can't be, and you're either on one side of the line or you're the other side of the line. I was very black and white around this whole selfish, selfless thing. Yeah. And it's only taken a fair amount of battering within my own psyche to finally come to realize that every action that we take has elements of both in it.
Yeah.
And it's taken a while for me to work that bad boy out, to be perfectly honest. And, there are some times where you will be more selfless than selfish, and there'll be some more times that you'll be more selfish than selfless. But some of that is down to the interpretation of whoever it is that is receiving said act, right? And who is involved in said action, and so on and so forth. But every single action has some element of both. And when it comes to bringing it back to this, this self-worth, this CEO mindset, and so on and so forth, and having that true north, your intent, your energy, your intellect, all of that sort of stuff, if that is all going towards a North Star, then you have a level of comfort that the decisions that you are making, whether it is for, and CEO mindset doesn't just apply to business. We're talking life here from a CEO mindset point of view. Taking the decisions that you're making, selfishness require a small degree of selfishness.
100%.
All of them.
And selfishness isn't a bad thing. It is something that's been used to make, I know for me especially, it's been used to make me feel as though I'm not allowed to have me time, or I'm not allowed to take a break, or not allowed to do those things because I'm being selfish. But in actual fact, I would call that self-care.
Exactly. And I think you're exactly right. I think, if you were to draw a line and have selfless at one end and selfish at the other end, the extremes are the things that create loneliness, right? You're either really lonely externally because you're a selfish prick, or you're incredibly lonely internally because you are selfless to the point of completely ignoring who you are.
Yep.
And I think if we can, instead of trying to focus too much one end or the other, if we can play in the middle somewhere, then we'll be all right, eh?
Absolutely. And, if we link that back to one of the things that we have mentioned, is what you project is what you get. So what is going on for you internally, you are putting out. So ultimately, it's what you will also receive back. And this kind of links into where I was talking about with the expectations around the CEO mindset. For me, was around even just by putting out the level of expectations around the behavior that I should be or would like to be. It's more of a like. It's where I would like to see myself at a certain level. And that does not mean burnout. That does not mean, to me, that means walking on the beach every morning and being able to have lunch with a friend every day, or whatever that might be, so that balance is there. To me, it's not working harder, and it always used to be. It always about doing more, being more, and that ultimate perfection as you said before. Whereas now it's like, no, that CEO mindset, if we call it CEO, Chief Energy Officer, whatever you want to call it, to me, that's about finding balance in life. It's balance between working a corporate job, running 2 businesses, being a single parent with 2 children, running a household, getting them to sports, not killing them on the way, getting dressed in the morning, all those kinds of things. So in my mind, what my CEO mentality looks like is not what, as you said, a lot of people, and I used to be the same, Rolls Royce experience of what a human It's not. It's unique. It's unique to you. So there shouldn't be any guilt attached to it. There should be
absolutely
balance. And I think that's a really important point to make.
Absolutely. And I think to round that off, I think it's taking decisions and having complete accountability for the consequences of any of those decisions that you make.
That's it. That is it.
And then from there, it turns into a win or learn game, right? As opposed to win or lose game.
Because how easy is it to blame others and make excuses? What if we took personal responsibility for our actions and our behaviours and acted accordingly? Maybe the world might be a little bit of a better place.
No, well, at least our world,
That's all that matters, really, isn't it?
Well, look, let's face it, right? At the end of the day, there's all these people that go on crusades to change the world. If you could change your world, then you're off to a good start. But most people don't tend to bother doing that. They tend to be too busy trying to change the external world. And realistically, if we can work by example as opposed to work by, definition, society's definition, then we might be, then we're probably making more of an impact by doing that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I totally agree. I think bring it back to self, bring it back to the internal, do what we can for us, lead with love and kindness. That's where I sit on it.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can't lead with love and kindness, then at the very, very least, be accountable to what's going to come as a result. And then you might even learn to change then anyway. I think this was an awesome chat. I like this one. This one's really, really good because I hope that anybody that is listening about this, it might get you to just stop for a second and really check in on, your self-projection, your self-image, your self-worth. And what have you. Maybe think about how you could put some parameters around that to either remind yourself or those around you if you feel you have an advantage taken of you, either professionally or personally. And if you do feel that way, then what are the things that you can do? What are the conversations that you can have to maybe, give yourself that element of self-worth that we all struggle for at times. That we all struggle for.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just leave us on one little reminder is that the only person that is in control of our happiness is us. And the only way that we can create happiness is to go internally into the self-doubt, find those shadows that are there, look in the corners, and really start to acknowledge some of that to allow you to free up space to move forwards and grow and upgrade, as we said.
Absolutely. Kiani, I'll very much look forward to our next episode when we may or may not be interjected by various children, both 2- and 4-legged. Gang, thank you so much for tuning in once again. We sincerely hope that this brought you some value and we hope that we've helped you get one step further towards humanizing your business. Team, stay safe, healthy, happy. On behalf of Kiani and myself, you take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are very grateful for your time and we really hope that we've provided some value.
Follow us on Instagram if you've liked what you've heard, and if you have anything that you want us to talk about, things that might have been bugging you but you've not quite had the bottle to really bring it out into the open, send us a DM and we'll happily bring it to the table.